Right, this is recording 3 of topic 1, and we're going to talk about research design. So, study design or research design is just how you test a hypothesis, and we have 2 main types, correlational and experimental. In correlational studies, you just take measurements of different variables and then run tests to see if they're related, okay? Generally, people answer them all at one time. For example, we had, do people who read science fiction also read fantasy? All people had to do was identify authors in a checklist, and the more authors they identified that were sci-fi authors, operationalized reading science fiction, and the same with fantasy, right? Is age related to moral identity? You have people fill out a little scale of moral identity, and you ask them their age. Do people who report exercising more frequently weigh less? Now, this type of research is generally called cross-sectional. It means we take everybody, we ask them the same questions at one time. Each person is only tested once on each variable or whatever, right? You cannot make any causal inferences based on correlational studies. Correlation is not causation. And this is from a site called tylervigan.com. You can explore spurious correlations, which means that even though things move in the same direction, it doesn't mean there's any causal relationship between them. We can see the green line is US spending on science, space, and technology, and the red suicides by hanging, strangulation, suffocation, right? These are not related in the sense. They just happen to move in the same direction, but there's no causation. To establish causation, we have to use experiments. Now, in an experimental study, the experimenter or researcher manipulates the independent variable and measures scores on a dependent variable. The independent variable refers to the one that is manipulated or changed by the experimenter. Okay, so if we are testing the effects of violent video games, and we're going to use this example many times this semester, then we might randomly assign people to play either a first-person shooter or something like Tetris, which is not violent, right? And if we're going to test the effects on aggression, that will be the dependent variable. So the independent variable is the one that's manipulated in this example video games. Condition is also called the level, treatment, factor, group. And that's just the category of the independent variable that creates the situation under which people are examined, right? So violent video games, non-violent video games, right? The dependent variable is supposed to be caused by the independent variable, and it measures the participant's behavior under each condition of the independent variable. The independent variable is hypothesized to cause the dependent variable, and the way we test whether it does have a causal influence on it is by manipulating it and then measuring how that manipulation affects the dependent variable. So let's look at another example. Statistics is always used in experimental research to test drug effectiveness or behavior of drugs, behavior therapy, therapy, so forth. So these are independent variables. Say we're going to treat depression, and we're going to test whether a drug or behavioral therapy works to decrease depression. The way we do is we compare means on an outcome measure, such as self-reported depression. That's the dependent variable. So for example, you could say, is cognitive behavioral therapy an effective treatment for depression? So for example, 50 people would come to a clinic for help, and they're administered a depression test. This would be the pre-test. Then we'd randomly assign 25 to therapy and 25 to a control group, which is waitlisted. So when people come for help, we can't just say, no, you might not receive help. We just have them be on a wait list, and they'll receive help after they do a post-test depression, okay? The depression is measured again after 6 weeks. So the ones in therapy do 6 weeks of therapy, and the ones who weren't in therapy just come back and do the test. That's the data collection. Now, our question is, will people in the experimental group who received therapy report less depression than those in the control group? The independent variable is therapy versus none. And the dependent variable is depression. So say we collect the data, right? We have all these scores of the cognitive behavioral therapy group and the scores of depression in the control group. And we can represent this in a bar graph. And we have on the y-axis mean depression score. Of course, low scores are better, right? You want less depression. And on the x-axis, we have our groups. right? These are categories. This is a nominal variable. We have cognitive behavioral therapy, looks like had less depression than the control group who did nothing, who just tested again in 6 weeks, right? All right. So this is the end of this for SPSS. Watch my SPSS tutorial.